everybody. Welcome to a special episode of Psyched Podcast. We're really excited. So glad that you could join us at a kind of a little bit of a different time in the afternoon. So we do risk my children like storming down at any moment, but hopefully we'll be good. So thank you so much for joining us. My name is Rachel. I'm a school psychologist working in Maryland. I'm going to pass it over to Rebecca to tell everybody how to participate. Rebecca?
Hello, everybody. So this is so exciting for us, Facebook Live. As Rachel said, we don't do it that often, but you can participate just by adding your comments right to the thread. We are going to share your comments and try to reply. They do get kind of out of order when we reply to them, but we will be looking to see your comments and questions and thoughts as we go. We're really excited to have an episode in this way. And now I'm going to get right into it, pass it off to Eric, who's going to introduce our wonderful guest.
All right. Thank you, Rebecca. I'm Eric, and I'm a school psychologist also in Connecticut. And we are excited to have Renee Jain with us. And just a little bit about her. I'm excited because I've been a fan for a long time. So this is really neat that she's here live with us. And she is originally a tech entrepreneur who had anxiety, and she founded Go Zen to help a new generation of kids, parents, and therapists deal with anxiety. She's recognized as a pioneer in marrying technology to child psychology in a unique approach that nurtures the hearts and minds of kids. Through her writing, product invention and development, masterclasses for parents, and children's advocacy, she works to build the emotional intelligence of kids, including resilience, empathy, kindness, and critical thinking. Tens of thousands of families and professionals testify to the unparalleled success of GoZen's programs. And Renee has earned her master's in positive psychology. She is a MAPster, as we talked about last night, the Masters of Applied Positive Psychology from the University of Pennsylvania, and has in the scientific study of optimal human functioning from UPenn. So welcome, Renee. We are so glad that you are here.
I am so honored to be here. Thank you guys so much. I'm really excited. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Sure.
Oh, so exciting. And for those of you who don't know GoZen, Renee also does these fabulous workshops. And so you have to follow her. She has a Facebook page at GoZen, and you have to subscribe to her emails because she does these really amazing workshops with lots of practitioners, and it's been really a great source of professional development for me. So I wonder, Renee, if we could start with GoZen and just how that came to be and kind of what your mission is there.
Yeah, thank you for asking. So, as my bio mentions, I just put it out there, I was a super anxious kid. Every single day, every single night, I would wake up with worry. And I worried about a lot of different things. So it wasn't one specific thing, What if I don't do well in school? What if no one sits next to me on the bus? What if someone robs our house? So the anxiety started really in one area, I think in academics, and then it just started to bleed. And it was like the blob. Remember the blob? It just took over all different parts of my life. And I have these incredible parents. They're amazing, still amazing, beautiful, compassionate, loving. And they couldn't help me. They just didn't know what to do or say besides trust me, and it's going to be okay, and you're going to be okay, and there's nothing to worry about. So lots of reassurance. And so this kind of started, I remember trying to sleep with my brother's wiffle bat under my bed when I was 5 or 6 years old because I was really worried about getting robbed. And it continued on for years. And I got to the point where I was thinking to myself, or I could feel it, that my parents started to feel helpless and hopeless, that they couldn't help. Watching your child suffer and you don't know how to help them. And my brother was suffering, and I just thought, if I just pretend like everything's okay, then maybe everyone else will be okay and stop worrying about my worry, and that'll be good, and maybe it'll just go away if I kind of fake it. So I went on faking it. I probably started, I don't remember, maybe I was 12 or 13 when I started pretending like everything was okay. And I did this honestly until my mid-20s, when I can remember being in this very terrible relationship, frankly. I had this boyfriend at the time, and I was going through a breakup, as many of us do in our lives. And I had never developed skills to deal with challenges. So I started having these massive panic attacks, to the point where I had to take myself to the hospital one day because I was like 24 or 25 and I was clutching my chest and I couldn't breathe. And I was 100% convinced I was having a heart attack, fully convinced, like, this is it. This is the end, I'm taking my last breaths. And my doctor, ran some tests and he was like, listen, you're way too young for a heart. You don't have a heart condition. You don't have any underlying conditions. You're perfectly healthy. You have anxiety, severe anxiety, and you need to do something. And so I started exploring all these different things, yoga and meditation, and I ended up at a therapist's office, amazing, wonderful, amazing psychologist who started to teach me really the basics of how to feel. I had cut off my feelings for so very long that I didn't even recognize them. I didn't even know what they were. I had to reacquaint myself with anger and with guilt and with sadness and even with the good emotions, right? Because I had been non-feeling or pretending for so long. And as I was in these therapy sessions, I just had these moments where I thought, oh my goodness, I know I'm in my mid-20s now and I'm an adult, but I'll tell you what, if we had a time machine, I could certainly go back in time and teach the younger version of myself what you're teaching to me today, and it would have changed my life. And at the time, I had an undergraduate degree in finance. It was like in business. I was already running my own business by that age, and it had nothing to do with psychology. But I thought to myself, I have to drop what I'm doing and completely change paths. And that was really the genesis, or like the seed that was planted for Go Zen. So I went back to school and I got a coaching certification and I got my master's in applied positive psychology. And I started working with people, with parents and with schools. And I developed Go Zen, which is essentially a set of social and emotional learning programs. And we use different media like animation to teach skills of resilience and well-being, because they're skills to kids in a language that they can understand. And, that was a really long-winded answer to your question, but really, if you just caught me, we only had a few minutes together and you said, what do you do? I would tell you that I teach kids skills that I needed as a kid. And that's basically the whole, everything that I do in the world, every single day. That's what I do.
Oh, it's so beautiful and powerful. And we've said a lot amongst ourselves that we each became the adult that we needed when we were kids. And that's why we're in this work in school psychology. And I just love the power of your story. And I also find the work so helpful to me as a school psychologist to use the modules and the language and the characters. So how do you, but you mostly kind of share with parents for parents to use the programs at home, or how do you get the word out?
Yeah, so it's really interesting, because we always get the question, well, what age is this for? And you'll see if you go on GoZen.com, the age is kind of buried sometimes. It might be more at the forefront now because we've been asked so many times, but these are skills that anyone can use at any point in their life. And so really the goal was that this would be a program that a kid could turn on and watch, these cartoons basically and start to learn skills. Well, we found that parents started to watch with their kids or on their own. And then the parents started to tell their teachers, their kids' teachers in their schools. So we started off by working with parents and saying, if you want to teach skills of resilience, or if your child is feeling anxiety, this is a program that will help. And over the years, we started with one program, then we made another program on resilience and a program on mindset. And, so we created a bundle of programs essentially. But we started to have schools reach out to us and say, can we deliver these in schools? So now, it's been about 10 years. We work with about 5,000 schools around the world. And tens of thousands of parents, and I feel so blessed to be able to do that. And I say this in all honesty. I also feel like we're just scratching the surface, honestly, just scratching it. Because as you guys know, in the work that you do, these are things that if we taught every kid early, we could do so much prevention. Who's not going to face a challenge in their life? And now, it's so apparent, right? We're all in it. But at some point, all of us are going to face something. And there's just no way that we can plow down or eliminate the challenges for our kids, nor do we want to. Do we really want them to live a life without challenge? It's a question that I ask parents all the time. Do you really want your kid to have no challenges in their life? No, but we don't want that. But we want them to be able to navigate through them and grow from them. And that just takes so much practice.
I feel like that's so relevant too, with everything that we're going on. I've got 2 children at home doing the virtual learning full time. So and I'm watching my kindergarten student become frustrated with, click on the link, now do this now. So, all these steps, and I see all these little faces on the screen getting frustrated. And, we're lucky enough that we have a teacher that is implementing, some strategies. Okay, let's take our breaths now. I see that people are getting upset, but it's so important, I think.
Oh my goodness, it's so hard. Can you imagine having been, I remember kindergarten. I mean, the things I remember about kindergarten are playing with mud, literally, like making polished stones. These are like my memories from kindergarten. I cannot imagine being 5 or 6 years old or 4 years old and having to log on to Zoom or whatever technology is being used. I cannot imagine not being able to read facial expressions. I can't imagine like sitting there all day. I know that there are schools that are doing the best that they can and teachers doing the best that they can, but there are some schools that have rules like you can't eat and you can't move and you can't have a virtual background and you can't do this, and the kids are like, oh my goodness. It's so hard. It's so hard.
Yeah, that level of the anxiety now is sort of the norm, right? So we're all just in this together with probably heightened emotions, heightened fear, heightened worry, and we see it now. Perhaps those who may not have in the past. So right, like you said, now more than ever. We need those tools and skills to be able to navigate these challenges that we're all facing day to day. Just
I like
incredible.
What you said too about kind of that wraparound that parents can do it. Parents can implement it, So I'm picturing, yes, parents and teachers kind of on the same page, teaching these skills and kind of immersing.
Yeah, and one of the things that we really love to do, is destigmatize anxiety, right? It's what you guys do all day long. Oh, you're anxious? Welcome to being human. It's like a thing. And so in the programs and the books that we put out, we like to make it fun. We like to make it funny. And I have had some people, most of the people take to the humor in the programs, but some people have been over the years like, how dare you make it funny? This is a very serious subject. I said, yeah, it is very serious for a lot of kids, right? It's a big, overwhelming thing that they're dealing with. So why do we have to make the techniques and the instruction, why do we have to make that so serious? Isn't laughter some of the best medicine? So we love to use, and like anything that anyone does in their own work, part of my own personality is infused into the work, and I like laughing. I like making people laugh. I like to laugh. And so that's a big thing that we do. I know that, Rebecca, you've seen the programs. We have goofy characters, and we have ways to make kids laugh, at themselves sometimes. It can be really therapeutic, as you guys probably know.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm finding that more than ever, as you were saying, kids that have been doing what you were doing, kind of trying not to feel and have been anxious all this time and not even really identifying with that. They're the ones that I'm seeing a lot in this back to school time, in this very unique back to school time. Eric and I are in Connecticut and we are 100% in person. So kids are coming back with all different procedures and precautions. And they just are, really anxious, as we all are, but it's the ones that are okay with feeling it and talking about it that can move through it, and the ones that really need that social emotional learning, who aren't there yet, who aren't able to express it or identify it or understand it. So
that's a huge point. I mean, anxiety makes you hyper vigilant to begin with, right? You're constantly looking around for the danger in your environment, but we have asked kids and ourselves and everyone to be hyper vigilant now. So we're activating, we're turning. If the switch wasn't flipped on before, it's flipped on now. Listen, make sure you stand this distance away, make sure you're doing this, make sure you're washing your hands. So they have been asked to be hyper vigilant. So I absolutely can understand why kids coming back in person or online are just experiencing, no matter what your situation is, you are experiencing a level of anxiety, right? No matter how much we've tried to bubble wrap our kids from everything that's going on, they're feeling it. They are feeling it.
So how did you go from there, from all that wonderful work and supporting parents and kids in schools, understanding anxiety and practicing skills to ride the waves? How did you get from there to your new book and your new topic?
Thank you for asking. So I have the book next to me. I'm in my home right now. It's in like every room of my house. The kids are like, another one? So I recently wrote a book with my friend, Dr. Shefali Sabari, and the book is called Superpowered. And one of the themes in the book, I thought this was really important. One of my missions is to really teach kids that when they're coming to work alongside someone, when they're coming into this work, whether it be sitting in an office with a school psychologist or talking to their parents, that let's not start with the idea that something is extremely wrong with you, that something is going terribly wrong that needs to be fixed, right? Obviously, kids come and they say, I have these issues and I have these challenges and I want to work through them. But the premise of this book is that POWER is actually an acronym, is that you've come into the world with these certain powers. You came in completely present, right? If you have ever hung around like a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, they're super mindful. You can't take a walk with one of those kids because they don't walk in a line, right? They stop and they like smell a flower or they point to or they lick the ground or something. We come in present, and it's amazing to me that we spend so much time and so much money, right, as we grow up trying to come back to presence. I mean, mindfulness and mindfulness classes are ubiquitous, right? Everybody's trying to get more mindful, but we come into the world mindful. The O is for originality. So we come into the world completely original, right? We come in, if you ask your 4 or 5-year-old to get dressed, they will go in their room and they will maybe put on a tutu or they'll put on I have one right here. They'll put on, polka dot socks, and they'll come out and they would go to school like that, right? They would go to school in their pajamas because they don't care. They don't have anyone to impress. They don't have any social media to impress. They're original and they own it. And the W, I think, was one of the most important things, right? We come into the world whole and worthy. We don't need to score a goal or get a trophy or do anything. We come in whole and we feel worthy. We don't need to do something in order to feel worthy. The E is for energy. You can see I have a bundle of energy right here. He's completely energized. We come in energized. He's so energized. And the R is resilient, right? Have you ever met a child who's come into the world who has the ability to walk, who says, you know what? I've fallen down 100 times. I think I'm just going to give up. We are just resilient. So this book starts by giving kids examples and making them think of examples of how they're present, original, whole, energized, and resilient. And we're just coming back to our base of who we are, our natural, innate, amazing, powerful self. And then, of course, we go through lots of different... Okay, you know what? That's not okay. Sorry, guys. We come back to we're coming back. Okay, Okay, thank you very much.
I'm like, I hear mine upstairs. They're like 2 seconds from coming down. So I think we all understand, especially working now from home and the Zoom calls. My children are everywhere.
That's so funny, and it's so cute.
Right.
I think if
we've all been there.
Yes. If anyone's children were here to hear your son, Renee, they would all chime in, and we would have a little chorus.
I love it.
Sorry. I guess that bribe didn't work.
And this is right.
Go ahead, Eric.
I was going to say, this is the challenge, right? That every parent is facing, staying at home and, trying to entertain our kids. And
that was real parenting. I mean, it's happening all day long, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for asking about the book. So the book is really, we're trying to shift the paradigm in a few things. One is this belief that we're broken and we need to be fixed. And what goes along with that is really normalizing anxiety. In fact, the publishers it's Penguin Random House, and they called to have a roundtable discussion about this word anxiety. So the question was, maybe we should call it worry. Maybe people will be like, anxiety. And I said, no, we are talking about anxiety. The word needs to go, and they were totally on board. The word needs to go on the title of the book. And it is okay. Not only is it okay, it's necessary to talk about. So in the book, there's no, get rid of it. Let's get stress-free, right? We don't talk about that. We talk about transformation. You have this thing. Some of it is productive and some of it's not productive, right? The unproductive parts, we're going to give you a lot of tools to work through the unproductive anxiety. But some of your stress and worry can actually be productive, but you need to learn to navigate through it. So those are kind of some of the ideas and the premise of the book.
It sounds awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
I love the topic. As you know, Renee, our mutual friend Karen Baruch-Feldman and I are working on a project on resilience as well. And I think that it's so timely. Our kids need it. We need to understand how we can tap into those inner strengths and face these challenges. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm so excited for what you guys are creating. I cannot wait to see it. It's funny. Someone was saying, when we were writing this book, someone else just released something on anxiety. And it's good. The more the merrier. The more the merrier. There's no monopoly on human feelings and how much we can contribute to helping kids and ourselves work through them. I think it's amazing. I'm super excited for you guys.
Thank you. What would and by the way, I think I need to tap into my own resilience right now, because I thought that this would be on Facebook Live, but it's actually on YouTube Live. So that's why my Facebook friends are going to see it recorded, and please still comment if you're watching this video after we share it. But it's just an example of how we fail. We fail forward sometimes, right? And I'm hoping that's what can happen with this conversation. But what would you recommend for school-based professionals working with kids in school in terms of helping them identify their feelings, identify anxiety, know the line between helpful and unhelpful, and how do we teach skills of resilience in school?
Yeah, I'm sure that teachers all over the world are thinking to themselves, oh my goodness, I do not have psychological training, right? How am I supposed to help identify what's going on? And the thing about anxiety, like many emotions, can wear many different masks, right? Sometimes we see anger and defiance, and underneath is anxiety. Sometimes we see it, I always say anger is, anxiety's kissing cousin. And sometimes it shows up and it manifests in different ways. And a lot of times parents will say to me, when do I know it's a problem? And I always say, if it is I know that you guys probably have your own way of figuring out if it needs attention. I always say as a rule of thumb, is it disruptive, right? Is it disruptive to regular life, to sleeping, to socializing, to doing what you want to do and showing up as you want to show up? So for example, when I was young, part of my anxiety was social anxiety. So I wanted to do things like go to parties or go to sleepovers, and I wanted to do that. It's not that I wanted to stay home. I wanted to be there, but I couldn't get myself to the point where it was very disruptive, to my family and to my ability to function generally. And so as a teacher, it can be really hard. You have 20, 30, sometimes I lived in LA for a while, sometimes 40 students in your class, right? You're attending to a lot of them. Right now, if you're in person, like you guys are in Connecticut, and I don't know if you're doing this, but in a lot of in-person classes, they're wearing masks. I think not being able to see facial expressions can be really difficult, right? Now we've lost. So now we're not just reading this, which for some teachers was hard to read anyway. Now we're just reading this. Wow, that's become so much more difficult. So I think it's hard. I think you do have to look out for, there are some signs, grades dropping, disruptions, defiance, change in behavior, change in appetite. There can be so many things. But I think the question broadly that we also need to ask is, what responsibility, right, do we feel as when you're in an educator role to be able to make that call? I guess I would ask you guys what you feel, being school psychologists, you feel that teachers can do, or maybe even I'll use the word should be doing. What do you guys think?
Well, it's such a good question. I think where we started with normalizing it, noticing it, naming it, modeling it in ourselves as adults. Like, I know my teachers did a lot of that the first weeks of school. Like, just said, isn't this strange? Doesn't this feel uncomfortable? How am I going to show you that I'm smiling? Can you see if I'm smiling with my eyes? Can you tell by the sound of my voice how I'm feeling? And sometimes you won't be, so I'm going to let you know. I'm going to tell you how I'm feeling in this moment. Like, all of that very explicit talking about feelings as a model for adults, I think is more important than ever. And then helping kids feel like, okay, so that uncomfortable feeling that you're having and that thing that you're doing that the feeling is making you do is totally normal. I get it. Let's sit with it. Let's just tell me about it. So let's talk about it. And I also wanted to mention, I'm noticing too, which is so complicated right now, so many kids will bypass me and go right to the nurse because what they want is just to go home and not feel that feeling anymore, and not because school is bad or just because the anxiety can be so overwhelming. So I think partnering with our school nurses is going to be really important, but complicated right now because they know oftentimes kids are so smart. They know what to say that will get them home. So,
yeah. I think that's hard as a parent, when if you get a call from the school nurse and maybe the nurse is clued in and knows there's nothing actually wrong, right? The tummy ache is related perhaps to anxiety. It's hard as a parent to say, okay, I'm uncomfortable because my kid is uncomfortable, but I know that they can get through it. And it's hard to know, like, how maybe they're so overwhelmed that I should just let them come home. It's a very difficult call to make, I think, from a parenting point of view. I know that in my kids' school, they're in person right now in school, that we're not going on the premises of the school just to, reduce the risk of transmission of COVID. So I don't know what's going on as much as I used to, because I used to be able to go, my kids are 6 and 7, they're in 1st and 2nd grade. I used to be able to go into the classroom every day and kind of get a feel for the atmosphere. So I feel like a lot of us outside of the schools are operating a little bit with blinders on. Sorry, I didn't mean to change the subject. I was just thinking that, Rebecca, as you were saying,
Yeah, no, it's so true. And like also the normal ways that we, especially for the little ones, there is no, oh, do you just need a hug or, take my hand and we'll walk inside or we'll go to recess together. And there's nothing like that at all. And it's really challenging. And so that drop off feels, I'm sure, especially to the little ones and to our anxious ones, just much more severe, much more difficult.
Yeah.
Once they get there, though, I think teachers are going above and beyond to help them feel that sense of belonging and connection and care. It's just there's a lot of feelings all around.
I think those are big, big things. I think belonging is, there is just a new paradigm around belonging. How do you make a kindergartner, for example, Rachel was saying, right, a kindergartner on Zoom feel that they belong, especially in an online environment? Like, what does that look like? What does that look like what does a teacher do that's doing it well? I've turned the interviewing around. You guys tell me.
That's a great question. And, as we were talking last night with our guest yesterday, some of the folks in the audience were responding with, we can be strength spotters for these kids, right? We can engage them by recognizing their strengths, even if it's in a virtual environment. And I think making space, really, just like you said, making space for those emotions. So I think sometimes the first thing we want to do when we feel anxious or uncomfortable is to get rid of the feeling. And so then the battle becomes with the feeling, not necessarily working through the circumstances or the challenge. And so I'm noticing teachers making really good space for emotions and being able to help in that process with them. To allow kids to feel what they're feeling. And we're incorporating a new social and emotional learning component in the elementary school that I'm assigned to. And it looks really good because you can see kids just having that sense of emotionality just normalized for them. And what a great connection with the adults when that happens too, that, we're all feeling a little uncomfortable and it's okay, but tell me about what you're feeling. And
that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's like if that were the only step that we all took as in education system, if that was the only thing, like, oh, you're worried, you're crying, you're angry, and that's okay, right? Your feelings are okay. Like we are going to, in whatever way we can, hold space for them. Can you imagine? I think it would be a different world, frankly. I always thought that the feelings that I had were bad, right? Which made me bad or wrong. Something was wrong with me. So just the ability to know that it's not wrong and that you won't be somehow penalized or shamed in any way for feeling that way in a public space, right? Because we know a lot of times it's okay at home, but when we're in school or somewhere like that, no, I just have to put my game face on. So that's amazing to hear. That's really hopeful.
Totally agree.
Really
I think that having kind of that upfront, having these discussions and teaching those skills before you get into that frustrating place and having that shared vocabulary so that they understand their feelings, can label their feelings. And then teachers, what I see is really effective is, teachers modeling these things, because we know that teachers are having technology glitches and, whoops, the mask comes down or things like that, and can model these coping behaviors. So I've been seeing a lot of teachers doing that and showing. And going back to, your question or a comment about, what can teachers do? And I think that teachers need to give themselves more credit, because oftentimes I hear teachers say, well, I don't know how to teach that. I don't understand, but they really do. A teacher is a teacher. And so if we give them some tools and strategies or curriculum or some verbiage, teachers can pick this stuff up very nicely and run with it and be the kind of that first line of defense to help with normalizing and to help with the vocabulary and to help model and do all. And so I've been seeing really great things.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think they have to be the first line of defense. There are not enough nurses, coaches, school psychologists. They're just not enough. We've come to the time where we need to universally teach some of the basics, right? Of like emotions 101, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes a day. We have a lot of times schools will come to Go Zen and they'll say, I want to use your programs, but we're focusing on like the core math, reading, writing, and arithmetic. And I say, listen, I'm just saying this, in no way, shape, or form like putting myself in a box, but my parents were Indian immigrants, and boy, do I understand the core subjects. Okay, my parents were like, "You're learning math." My dad used to give me extra math homework when we came home. Like, I get it. I totally get it. However, the research is so clear now that if you teach kids social and emotional learning skills, it goes hand in hand with academics. They do 10 to 11% better on their tests and their other academic endeavors. And so I think the time has come. The time has come to teach these skills to kids and they're as important. They call them soft skills sometimes. I never understand that terminology. I don't know what that means. These are the skills that are going to get you through the hardest times of your life. So they're definitely, maybe they are soft, I guess that's okay. But it doesn't mean that they're not powerful.
So true. Absolutely. They're soft like water, the way water carves a rock. That's beautiful. And I just wanted to say, me too. My parents are both Indian immigrants too. So I have a strong connection with that focus on academics and the limits of how helpful that can be. And certainly in our back to school plan too. And I think in most schools, back to school plan post school closures last year in the spring for COVID, everybody understood that social emotional learning has to be a priority. But I think there is the adult fear that, okay, yeah, so is it a priority enough? Can we move on catching them up because they missed this, So I think we have to course correct, often manage that own fear of ours, because if they
that has been so much of the work, right? So much of the work to deal with our own fears about kids falling behind. And then you have to really have had to, a lot of people, including, everybody has had to do some hard introspection, falling behind on basically these magical metrics that we all made up, that we have to be at a certain place by a certain time. And I think it has created a lot of time, or it's forced a lot of great reflection, right? There have been, and I know it's created a lot of sufferings for kids who were in sports, for example, right? And they wanted to be competitive in a particular sport, and then their group sports were canceled completely. And that can be so difficult, because sports can be a beautiful, wonderful thing for so many different reasons, right? But parents had to come to terms with, oh my goodness, my kid's not going to be able to play tennis and be this star tennis player, right? Or this is going to affect their future. And how we all tend to be catastrophic thinkers at one time or another. And I find in my work with parents that it always ends up like 1 or 3 or 4 homelessness. The kids are going to be in jail, or they're going to be addicted to drugs. It's always like the worst, like the worst. I'm like, oh, okay, so they're going to do this math thing over again next year, but somehow that ends up like they're going to be homeless, right, in 15 or 20 years. So we really, really, really needed to start. And I think even though this has been a painful lesson for many of us, to reflect on our own, I don't want to say value sets, but I'm going to say value sets. And if those were aligned with the goals that we had for our kids and the way in which we were asking them to execute those goals.
It is so well said, and I'm still regulating my own disappointment that that we're not on Facebook Live.
Oh, you know what? Not to make you, it's okay to sit in the feeling. And now, enough of sitting in the feeling. I'm going to make you feel better. We can do it again sometime, okay? Invite me on again, and we will do this on Facebook Live.
Oh, thank you.
But see how I didn't let you sit in your disappointment? I couldn't handle it.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Don't post it. It'll be posted.
It's a bad example.
So funny, but that would be really awesome. I really do want to get the word out to school psychologists and parents, that just how helpful Go Zen is. I can't wait to read the book myself, and I'm sure that it's just absolutely fabulous. And so what are your next steps? How are you reaching and teaching, and what are your goals for the next immediate future?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I'm not very good at savoring. It's definitely something I've been working on. So the book debuted on September 22nd, and last week it hit the New York Times bestseller list. And my, thank you. My mom called me, and I had a hard time accepting her compliments and sort of sitting in the fact that this actually happened, because for a long time I didn't believe that the pain and the suffering that I experienced growing up could lead to meaning and help me help other people. I think that was one thing that was really it was just so exciting to have that kind of recognition, like, yeah, I didn't go through it in vain. And then the other thing I think that was so exciting is that, wow, a book on anxiety for kids it hit some kind of bestseller list. It's so important for all of us to acknowledge that our kids need this. And I felt like that was this, a signal basically for us that this work is important. So I know I didn't really answer your question, but what I'm trying to do right now is sort of savor the fact that there's been an openness and a receptiveness to the content, and then I have just have my creativity sort of spins out of control. So I have to rein myself in, are we going to animate the book? Like, what are we going to do next? So we have a few projects that are in the works and that I will let you know about once they start. But yeah, that's what I'm doing now. I'm trying to savor.
That sounds wonderful.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We're savoring. It's just beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing it all with us. I will ask if anyone has any questions, but nobody's watching really.
Okay, that's amazing that people will watch later and they'll get the content that they need. It's okay. I am so grateful to have had time with you guys too. It's been amazing.
Thank you.
So
yeah, and your passion is so inspiring to see somebody who so fully is willing to share and wants to do for others, and is just passionate about the work that you're doing. And I think that that's contagious, and that kind of helps us in our jobs as school psychologists, especially with this crazy year that we're all having. So it's refreshing to connect with you and hear about all this.
Thank you. And Rebecca, as I've told you before, and Rachel and Eric, I love your work. One of the things that I love about it, and this might just sound kind of mundane, but I love the consistency of it. You guys are always consistent. There is, I don't know, you don't even take the holidays off. There's always content that I want to read coming out of your, either coming out of your news feeds on social media or coming out of your podcast. So just know that your work is recognized and acknowledged and totally appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes. And then for anyone who is watching this recording, please do, if you have questions for us, we can continue the conversation time. So post your questions and your thoughts and your everything right under the video, and we will maybe we will schedule another Facebook Live conversation where we can get those questions to me.
See, I like this trick to rope her into another.
Right, this was a ploy.
I'm easily roped. You guys are awesome.
Thank you. And I just love your creativity too. It's just fantastic how you've, blended, your worlds of technology and animation and all of these amazing skills and using that to do this wonderful work that you're doing with this mental health support component. It's incredible. So
thank you. Only if they didn't invent things like Fortnite, I would be good. I can't compete with Minecraft and things like that. But if you're a household that doesn't use those things, you'll love Go Zen.
Yes. And they're never used in school, Fortnite and Minecraft. So, and it's very appealing to use in schools, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Good afternoon.